In this little video, I want to talk a bit about Cordarius, Maturin Cordier, his Latin name Cordarius. He spans the end of the 1500s, the beginning of the 1600s, and is quite important in the history of Latin and certainly the teaching of Latin. And his popularity lasted probably for about 400 years. His texts were in very great demand. In particular, his scholastic colloquia. Cordarius was very interested in the problem of how do we teach Latin. He observed that most of the students at universities in France and in Switzerland, where he was resident, didn't have very good Latin. Their spoken Latin was full of errors, and he was trying to work out ways of correcting this. And one thing he did was he wrote a series of scripted conversations, and these became very famous. For example, we know that at the University of Oxford and Cambridge, these texts were quite popular. And the reason we know they are popular is that whenever a student passed away, the bursars would record the contents of their rooms. Now, people died much more frequently, unfortunately, back in the 1600s, 1700s, than they do now, with fevers and all these things that we have medicines for nowadays. And just about every single student that passed away had Erasmus, the colloquia of Erasmus, and also the colloquia of Cordarius on their bookshelves. So at university, students were using these to brush up on their Latin. I've made a recording of this. It's available on DVD, using two different editions of the Cordarius text. There's slight differences between these editions. Alexander's edition, William's edition, read in Latin only, read in Latin, English, Latin as well. So you can listen to them, learn the Latin sort of roughly as you go through, and then listen to them again in Latin only. I think that the colloquia of Cordarius are very useful. The scholastic colloquia are based around the subject matter of school. And I'm going to read one of these to you so you can get a flavor of it. This is between two students called Elisaios and Felix. And here it goes. Quot annos habes? Tredecim ut a matre acepi tu vero? Equidem non tot habeo. Quot igitur? De est unus. Sunt ergo dodecim. In promptu est ratio. Sed frater tuus, quotum agit annum? Quintum? Quid ais iam Latine loquitur? Quid miraris? Semper habemus domi paedagogum, et doctum, et diligentem. Semper nos Latine loqui docet. Nihil vernaculum effert. Nisi aliquid declarandi causa. Qui etiam patrem non audemus nisi Latine alloqui. Nunquam igitur vernacule loquimini. Solum cum matre, itque certa quadam hora, cum illa nos ad se vocari iubet. Quid agitis cum familia? Cum familia rarus est nobis sermo, et quidem tantum intransitu. Sed tamen famuli ipsi nos Latine allocuntur? Quid ancillae? Si quando usus postulat, ut eas alloquamur, utimur sermone vernaculo, ut solemus cum ipsa matre. O vos felices, qui tam diligenter docimini. Est Deo gratia, quis dono patrem habemus, qui curet nos tam accurate erudiendos. Certe, eius rei laus, et honor unico celesti patri debetur. Sed quid agimus? Iam audio recitari catalogos. Ergo festinemus. And this recitari catalogos is referring to the prefects, of course, who would take the register at the start of class. And if you weren't there, then all kinds of punishments would be made. And Cordarius talks about these, the prefects, the teachers, all kinds of things that go on in the schoolroom. So these colloquia are quite interesting. And if you're a school teacher, of course, they're very interesting because they deal with the subject matter in school. So they're quite good. The Latin in Cordarius's colloquia is quite easy, much easier than the Latin that's used by Erasmus, because the goal of Cordarius isn't literary, it's practical. Erasmus's colloquia are almost, I mean, they're not difficult, but they're more sort of along the lines of literary exercises, teaching style, etc., at a higher level than the introductory colloquia of Corderius. So, anyway, the material is available on DVD. Just one moment, I'll find a bit of paper that has, there we go. This isn't a very high-tech outfit around here. Latinum.org.uk, and that will take you to the website where I have a list of all the DVDs that I produced that used to be on the Latinum podcast before it became extinct. And the DVDs are there, the prices are all pretty low, and you can find the DVD of Cordarius's colloquia. I myself listened to it many times. In fact, most of the Latin audio I made for myself so that I could convert my passive Latin into active Latin. And it appears to have worked. The psychologists tell us that our brains, when we listen to a language, are doing very similar things to what our brains do when we speak it. So we can learn to speak pretty much from listening alone if you listen to enough. Listening is far closer to speech than reading is, and of course in terms of the way how our brains developed, etc. Of course, spoken and oral language is much more ancient than written language. So processing written text is one higher step than processing text through audio, language through audio and through speaking. So I would highly advise you to listen to as much Latin as you can. These DVDs are an MP3, so you can put them onto your iPod or your MP3 player and walk around listening to Latin. And the more hours a week you can do this, the better your Latin will get. You can look up a biography of Cordarius on Wikipedia, and there are various other places as well. If you're looking him up, you might want to look up Castellio as well. That's Castellion and Calvin, and that whole sort of movement of which Cordarius was a part in the very end of the 1400s, early 1500s. All right. Bye. Vale.